Yeah, good presentation. And if you go back to the plan, I think that's certainly, if you go back to the drawing, which is your plan, just go back, probably that one. It's improved quite a lot, and you can start to see where you're starting to create those little endpoints and the spaces where people are gathering and clustering. And so I think there's some real merit and improvement actually in the way that you're laying things out. How is this different to another development, another housing development that might be built beside? What makes this?
So this housing is like community living and multi-generational living.
Yes, but how do you do that?
So each of them is like a basic concept from the longhouse and the multi-generational living. So each unit they have their own realm. So like their parents, their kids, they live together, but they still have their own realm. And the corridor itself, so it's like a sharing public space. So that's where everyone gets to interact with each other. So the unit apartment itself,
and in that space
to the corridor.
And is that just open space that you can gather in, or does it have a role or a function?
You mean the corridor?
Yeah, the corridor, or all those communal spaces. Do they have?
So the corridor itself, over here, you have you can see seats over here.
I suppose I'm thinking, why would someone gather in that space? What are you providing in that space that someone would gather?
Oh, it's just a corridor that you somehow pass through, that you can see, because there's points of activities here and concentric court. So somehow you still pass through you go through the corridor and interact with.
Peter, Richard, Chris?
I'm always interested in housing projects because they're a great challenge.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
I think the courtyard model is a very interesting one that's used both in the East and the West. Some of the difficulties that I can see in your scheme, such as some rooms seem to not have access to light and ventilation, and the public and the private always having to be negotiated, can be overcome in a scheme that I saw in Munich this year, in the summer, where the site was actually a whole block, and it had been owned by the public as an aged care facility, which was a ring of buildings around a big open space. And they kept one bit of it and renovated it, and then they sold off the other, but under very strict conditions that they follow this perimeter housing. They kept the old people's homes, and they put a kindergarten at the other end. They didn't get the public crossing through the length of it, but allowed public to cross in certain sections through the middle, and had 3 separate gardens: a playground, a formal garden with roses, a little forest. But because it was on one separate block, it allowed the negotiation with the public and the orientation of the stairwells and lifts to be on the street edges. And it also allowed each of the apartments, which had a front to back, they had 3 levels. They had high cost, medium cost, and subsidised costs for young families which needed help with money. So they had slightly different priorities, but it was a beautiful example of the state controlling the way that private money was taking advantage of the land and coming up with social. What you're interested in here is a better social life. So I think as the model is really good, but I do wonder whether you might have, if you'd been really clear about it, that you had chosen a site after you worked out the model and really understood the advantages of actually having a site that provides a public entry as well as a private heart, private central courtyard, which really is very difficult when you start having public and private, because you have to be defensive all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a very interesting project. You definitely should keep on with it, but you must find some really fantastic models where you can analyse and see these things, what they rely on. In this example, that I won't go on about it too much, but everyone got north and everyone got south. when you have the thinner line. And it was a pleasure to stay in it, to see it working so well. Anyway, so I do think this is definitely worth studying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to follow on from you.
Okay, can I know what's the building again?
Just to follow
I
on.
will tell you about it afterwards.
Yeah. Just to follow on from Brett, and I think I know the longhouses you're talking about.
Yeah.
I've visited them in Borneo. They're amazing communal installations with the communal area very clear, and then all the privacy behindhand in the little tiny apartments overlooking the river or whatever. They're brilliant, and I just admire you for taking on the problem, because what it's going to do with proper pursuit, it will help us eliminate old people's housing and these terrible places where old people are sent away from their families to basically finish up. There's a sense of terminus about them, and it's a great problem for our Western societies. The Aboriginal people say to us, why are you throwing all your best assets on the junk heap?
Yeah, that's actually
our most experienced people, and you're putting them in old people's housing. It's crazy. So I admire you for taking the problem on, first off. Secondly, as Britt was saying, you've got your north facing this way. I'm not sure that you've set it up in the best way to get the use of the north sun through, especially in the winter, and the cooling breezes coming through. Secondly, because you've actually used a module all the way, I think that's made it difficult for you to have places within that which are hubs of the family. 3 and 4 generations should be able to live in here. That's the beauty of it. The old grandparents can then help with the cooking and so on. You read Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude, and you will understand a lot more, right? Or we will anyway. You may already understand it. So I just think that somehow or other it could have been much more alive in its not only lounge areas, but in its central grandparents hub, and surrounded then by the family, rather than all in long units, right? And also the public area of those walkways maybe should have been on the outside, not in the middle, if I'm reading it correctly. And secondly, your levels through could have stepped down to the public areas and stepped up to the private. And it only has to come up this far with an upturn, and you can be behind here very quietly, fully open to the sunshine, and nobody sees you. Okay? Very important to be able to do that. And that might have helped you with all your services as well. But it's a great problem you've taken on. I don't think you've solved it brilliantly, but you've made an inroad to it. Okay?
Thank you.
One of the qualities of the longhouse is its social quality. It's actually a social building more than it is a physical building. So in some tribes, just the men live in it. In other places, the families with 2 or more kids live in it. But essentially the main room is one room with no privacy. So it's completely open, it has shared cooking.
Which means a corridor.
This is in Papua New Guinea in particular. And I think, the way you started out was a great sort of reversal of the way that housing has been going, right? Which is a terrific way to look at it, which is social housing is people, it's not privacy. And that's a really good way of looking at it. I think you could have gone a lot further.
Because I'm struggling between because the whole year around we were arguing private and public space.
You could have been a lot braver with your corridor, for instance, and made the corridor the room.
I've looked through the long chart as well, the one that you said, the corridor.
Just went to a really interesting housing development in Los Angeles. On one side of the street is public housing. This is brand new, right? And the public housing is small and totally affordable. It's 3 levels, but the lower level is all studio workshops. And the people from the public housing come down to the lower level, they lift up the big roller door, and there's a big room and they're making things. On the other side of the street, 5 metres away, is the most expensive housing in LA that is subsidising the public housing. And that's how it was designed, and that's how it's been built and made by the developer. The expensive housing, which is huge apartments, one sold for 16 million, is subsidising and living next to public housing. Right? So there is a shift that's going on. So my point to you is that maybe you could have shifted it extraordinarily further. Because at the end of the day, like there was that great example in Hong Kong when the city got abandoned, and some of these big developments that were in the middle of the city, they're not abandoned, but it got changed in the turnover. These big corridors, squatters came in, and they set up camp not in the apartments, in the corridor, and they set up kitchens in the corridor, and they all lived in the corridor, and they only went to the apartment to sleep.
You're talking about the long chat. Yeah.
So I mean,
that one,
there's a way of living here that you're reigniting again, which is a real goer. I mean, it's going to be, I think, and also they're finding that sort of living has less mental health issues than individualised living, housing, because people are sharing responsibilities and sharing things. There's much more I guess a balanced way of seeing things. So I think there's a lot of potential in this scheme, and maybe you've just got a little bit conservative at the end. Yeah, well done.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed having multiple discussions with you, and we've gone down those roads and back this way and that way the whole time, and it's a credit to you that you've stuck out some things and relinquished other things, and and you missed some of the really great things that we talked about in there, but it's okay. But I've really enjoyed it, and it's really great to see.
Okay. Thank you.
A really good effort, and there has been some good conversations. The words that have all been spoken and you're agreeing with have got to be captured in your presentation as well. So the way that you show the internals, the graphic has to capture that, and the way that you show a plan isn't blue and red, it's timber and surface, it's carpet and rugs and things.
Okay.
You see, so you just have to watch the language of your drawings, that it matches what you're trying to get across as well. But a really good effort, really well presented, and I do appreciate that you stuck to your
intent, originally
and your ethic as well. So that's very good. Thank you, JP.
Thank you. 90 seconds to go. How long to do this?